Julia and Peter, co-workers whose lives take an unexpected turn when Peter's health crisis reveals a hidden truth. Julia is the perfect donor to save him. But this isn't just a story of medical miracles. It's a journey through fear, hope, and the unbreakable bonds formed in the face of life's greatest challenges. In the next few minutes, you will witness a story that challenges conventional wisdom, showcasing the incredible power of sacrifice and the unexpected rewards it brings. How far would you go for a friend? Peter had always been the picture of health, an energetic and dedicated worker who was the heart of his team at the office. But recently, his colleagues noticed he seemed off. His usual vibrant demeanor had faded, replaced by a pallor and an unusual fatigue. Concerned, Peter went to the doctor for what he thought would be a routine checkup. The diagnosis was a shock. Peter's kidneys were failing, and he urgently needed a transplant to survive. The news hit him like a ton of bricks. He was only in his mid-30s, and the thought of his life hanging by a thread was terrifying. Peter's doctor explained that without a new kidney, his chances were grim. The waiting list for a donor was long, and time was not on his side. Back at work, Peter struggled to keep up appearances. His colleagues noticed his absence during meetings and the dark circles under his eyes. Julia, his co-worker and friend, was particularly worried. She had always admired Peter's resilience and kindness, and seeing him so vulnerable was heartbreaking. One afternoon, during a quiet moment in the break room, Julia found Peter sitting alone, his head in his hands. She approached him gently, her heart aching for her friend. Peter, are you okay?" as she asked, her voice filled with concern. Peter looked up, his eyes reflecting his inner turmoil. I'm not sure how to say this," he began, his voice trembling.
I'm really sick, Julia.
"I need a kidney transplant, and I don't have much time." Julia's heart sank. She had never seen Peter so defeated. "Oh, Peter," as she whispered, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Peter sighed, shaking his head. "The only thing that can save me is a new kidney, and finding a compatible donor in time is nearly impossible." The weight of his words hung heavily in the air. Julia's mind raced, her thoughts swirling with worry and the desire to help. She knew she couldn't stand by and do nothing while her friend's life was at risk. Peter's health continued to decline rapidly. He had to take frequent breaks during the workday, and his once sharp focus was dulled by constant pain and fatigue. Every day was a battle to stay afloat, and the fear of the unknown gnawed at him. He had always been the one to help others, and now, in his time of need, he felt helpless and alone. Julia couldn't shake the thought of Peter's condition. She began researching kidney transplants and the donor process, hoping against hope that there might be something she could do. She scheduled an appointment with her doctor, determined to find out if she could be a potential match. The testing process was rigorous, and Julia went through a whirlwind of emotions as she awaited the results. She thought about Peter constantly, about the possibility of giving him a second chance at life. It was a daunting decision, but she knew in her heart that if she could help, she had to try. One morning, Julia received a call from her doctor. Her heart pounded as she answered, bracing herself for the news. Julia," her doctor began, "I have good news. You're a compatible match for Peter." Tears of relief and joy streamed down Julia's face. She couldn't believe it. She had the power to save Peter's life. She quickly composed herself and made her way to Peter's office, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Peter was sitting at his desk, looking pale and exhausted. Julia knocked softly and entered, her eyes shining with determination. Peter, I have something important to tell you," as she said, her voice steady. Peter looked up, curious but weary.
What is it, Julia?"
She took a deep breath, her heart full of hope.
I'm a match, Peter.
"I can donate my kidney to you." Peter's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Are you serious?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Julia nodded, tears brimming in her eyes.
Yes, I am.
"I want to do this for you, Peter. You've always been there for everyone, and now it's our turn to be there for you." Overwhelmed with gratitude, Peter could hardly find the words.
Thank you, Julia.
"You're giving me a chance to live." In that moment, a spark of hope ignited in Peter's heart. With Julia by his side, he felt a renewed sense of strength and determination. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in a long while, he dared to believe that a brighter future was possible. Julia had always admired Peter's dedication and kindness at work. So, when she learned about his desperate need for a kidney transplant, she felt an overwhelming urge to help. After researching the process of becoming a donor, Julia decided to get tested, hoping against hope that she might be a match. The waiting period for the results was excruciating. Julia's mind raced with possibilities, her thoughts constantly drifting back to Peter and his struggle. She knew the odds were slim, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was meant to help him. One bright morning, Julia's phone rang. Her heart pounded as she answered, recognizing the number from the clinic. Julia? The doctor's voice came through steady and calm. I have your test results. Julia held her breath, her hands trembling slightly. And? She managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a brief pause before the doctor spoke again.
You're a match, Julia.
You're a compatible donor for Peter. Julia's heart soared with relief and joy. She felt tears spring to her eyes as the weight of the news settled in. She had the power to save Peter's life. Without hesitation, she thanked the doctor and quickly made her way to Peter's office, her mind racing with how to break the news. As she entered the office, she found Peter looking more exhausted than ever, slumped over his desk. His condition had deteriorated, and the urgency of the situation was clear. Julia knocked gently on the doorframe, and Peter looked up, a faint glimmer of curiosity in his tired eyes. Hey Julia, he greeted weakly, trying to muster a smile. Peter, I have something important to tell you, Julia began, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. She walked over to his desk, her eyes meeting his with determination. I got tested to see if I could be a kidney donor for you. Peter's eyes widened in surprise, a mixture of hope and disbelief crossing his face.
You did? But
Julia nodded, her smile growing. And guess what?
I'm a match, Peter.
I can donate my kidney to you. Peter's breath caught in his throat. He struggled to process the news, his emotions overwhelming him.
Julia, are you serious?
You'd do that for me? Julia reached out, taking his hand in hers.
Yes, I would. You mean a lot to me, Peter.
And if I can help you, then that's what I'm going to do. Tears of gratitude welled up in Peter's eyes. He had been grappling with the grim reality of his situation, and now, out of nowhere, a beacon of hope had appeared. Thank you, Julia, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. You're giving me a chance to live. The days that followed were filled with preparations for the surgery. Julia underwent more tests and evaluations to ensure she was healthy enough to donate. Throughout the process, her resolve never wavered. She knew the risks, but she also knew the profound impact her decision would have on Peter's life. Peter, too, found his spirits lifting. The prospect of receiving a kidney from Julia gave him a renewed sense of hope and determination. He admired Julia's courage and selflessness, and his gratitude for her grew deeper with each passing day. Finally, the day of the surgery arrived. Julia and Peter were both admitted to the hospital, their hearts pounding with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. As they were prepped for the procedure, they shared a moment of quiet reflection. Julia, Peter said softly, reaching out to hold her hand. I can't thank you enough for this. No matter what happens, you've given me hope. Julia squeezed his hand gently, her eyes shining with warmth. We're in this together, Peter. And we're going to get through it. As the anesthesia took effect, Peter's last thoughts were of gratitude and hope. He was about to receive the most precious gift one person could give another, the gift of life. And it was all thanks to Julia, whose unexpected match had turned a desperate situation into a story of courage, sacrifice, and enduring friendship. Julia's decision to donate her kidney to Peter wasn't one she took lightly. It was a journey fraught with emotions, fears, and profound reflections on life and friendship. From the moment she learned she was a match, a whirlwind of thoughts and feelings consumed her. Initially, there was elation. Julia felt an overwhelming sense of purpose, knowing she could save her friend's life. But as the reality of her decision set in, she grappled with fear and uncertainty. What if something went wrong? What if she wasn't strong enough to go through with it? These questions haunted her, but she knew she had to confront them head-on. Julia spent many sleepless nights pondering her decision. She talked to her family and close friends, seeking their advice and support. Her parents were worried but supportive, understanding the gravity of her choice. It's your decision, Julia, her mother said gently. We're proud of you for wanting to help Peter, but make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. Her best friend, Sarah, was a constant source of comfort. You're one of the bravest people I know, as Sarah told her over coffee one evening. But don't forget to take care of yourself, too. This is a big deal. The words of those she loved gave Julia strength, but the fear lingered. She visited the hospital several times, meeting with doctors to discuss the procedure. Each appointment brought new information and new fears. She learned about the potential risks and the long recovery period. It was daunting, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was what she was meant to do. One afternoon, Julia found herself alone in her apartment, overwhelmed by the weight of her decision. She decided to take a walk to clear her head. As she wandered through a nearby park, she came across a small pond and sat down on a bench. The peaceful surroundings gave her a moment to reflect. She thought about Peter, His kindness, his unwavering support for everyone around him, and his current struggle. She remembered the look of hope in his eyes when she told him she was a match. That hope gave her a sense of resolve. She realized that the fear she felt was natural, but it didn't outweigh her desire to help her friend. Julia took a deep breath, feeling a wave of clarity wash over her. She knew what she had to do. It wasn't just about saving Peter's life, it was about standing by a friend in need and making a difference in the world. The next day, Julia called the hospital and confirmed her decision to proceed with the donation. She felt a mix of nerves and determination, but mostly, she felt a deep sense of peace. She met with the transplant coordinator, who walked her through the final steps of the process. As the day of the surgery approached, Julia's emotions intensified. She felt a deep connection to Peter and a profound sense of purpose. She spent time writing letters to her loved ones, expressing her feelings and gratitude for their support. It was a cathartic experience, allowing her to process the enormity of what she was about to do. On the morning of the surgery, Julia arrived at the hospital feeling surprisingly calm. She was greeted by the medical team, who reassured her and prepared her for the procedure. Peter was there too, his face filled with gratitude and admiration. Thank you, Julia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." You don't have to," Julia replied, her eyes meeting his with determination. We're in this together." As she was wheeled into the operating room, Julia felt a surge of bravery. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to face it. She had made her decision, and it was one she knew she would never regret. The surgery was a success, and Julia's recovery, though difficult, was filled with moments of triumph and reflection. She felt a profound sense of accomplishment, knowing she had made a difference. Her bond with Peter grew stronger, and they supported each other through the healing process. In the end, Julia's emotional journey was one of courage, love, and unwavering friendship. She had faced her fears and made a selfless decision, and in doing so, she had changed both her life and Peter's forever. The day of the surgery arrived, bringing with it a mixture of hope and fear that permeated the air. Julia and Peter were admitted to the hospital early in the morning, each accompanied by a sense of apprehension and anticipation. The halls were quiet, the atmosphere tense but filled with a sense of purpose. Julia was prepped for surgery first. As she lay on the gurney, the reality of what she was about to do settled in. The fluorescent lights above her seemed to blur as her thoughts raced. She took deep breaths, trying to calm her nerves. She was about to undergo a procedure that could save her friend's life, but the unknown loomed large. Nurse Emily, a kind and reassuring presence, approached her. How are you feeling, Julia?" As she asked, her voice gentle. Nervous," Julia admitted, her voice trembling slightly.
But ready.
"I know this is the right thing to do." Emily squeezed her hand. You're incredibly brave, Julia. We'll take good care of you." Meanwhile, Peter was in another room, being prepped for his own part of the surgery. His heart pounded in his chest, a mix of fear and gratitude coursing through him. He couldn't believe that Julia was willing to go through this for him. It was a gift beyond measure, and he silently vowed to honor her sacrifice. Dr. Thompson, the lead surgeon, entered Peter's room. We're ready to begin soon, Peter," he said, his tone professional but warm. "Julia is in the best hands, and we're going to do everything we can to ensure this goes smoothly." Thank you, Doctor," Peter replied, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. I trust you." The operating rooms were prepared meticulously. Every instrument was sterilized, every surface scrubbed clean. The surgical team moved with precision and calm, their years of training coming to the fore. They knew the stakes were high, but they were ready. Julia was wheeled into the operating room first. The bright lights and cool air heightened her awareness, but she focused on the faces of the medical team around her. She saw determination and compassion in their eyes, and it gave her strength. As the anesthesiologist administered the anesthesia, Julia felt her eyelids grow heavy. Her last conscious thought was of Peter, hoping with all her heart that this surgery would give him a new lease on life. Peter was brought in next, the anticipation almost overwhelming. As he lay on the table, waiting for the anesthesia to take effect, he thought about Julia. He thought about her bravery, her selflessness, and the incredible bond they shared. He whispered a silent prayer of thanks, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. The surgeries began, the operating rooms filled with the quiet hum of machines and the focused murmurs of the surgical team. Dr. Thompson led Julia's procedure with steady hands and a clear mind. He carefully removed the healthy kidney, ensuring every step was executed perfectly. The atmosphere was intense, but there was an underlying current of hope that buoyed the team's spirits. In the adjacent room, Dr. Reynolds prepared Peter for the transplant. The moment the kidney was brought in, there was a palpable shift in the room. It was a symbol of hope, of life, and the possibility of a future free from illness. Dr. Reynolds worked swiftly, his years of expertise guiding him through the delicate process of attaching the new kidney. Both surgeries were complex and demanding, but the medical teams were unwavering. Hours passed, each moment filled with precision and care. Finally, as the last sutures were placed and the machines beeped steadily, there was a collective sigh of relief. Julia was moved to recovery first. She slowly regained consciousness, the effects of the anesthesia wearing off. Nurse Emily was by her side, her smile warm and encouraging.
You did it, Julia.
The surgery was a success. Julia's heart swelled with relief and joy. How's Peter? She asked, her voice weak but insistent. He's doing well, Emily assured her. Dr. Reynolds is finishing up now, and everything looks good. Peter's surgery concluded shortly after. As he was wheeled into recovery, his first coherent thought was of Julia. He felt a deep, overwhelming gratitude for her sacrifice. Dr. Reynolds stood by his side, his expression pleased.
You did great, Peter.
The kidney is functioning perfectly. Peter smiled, tears of relief and gratitude in his eyes.
Thank you, doctor.
And thank you, Julia. The days following the surgery were filled with recovery and reflection. Julia and Peter supported each other, their bond stronger than ever. The fear and uncertainty had given way to hope and renewal. They knew the journey wasn't over, but they faced it together, with a newfound appreciation for life and friendship. In the end, the operating room had been a place of fear and hope, a crucible where life's fragility and resilience were laid bare. Julia and Peter emerged from it forever changed, their lives intertwined by an act of extraordinary courage and love. The days following the surgery marked the beginning of a new chapter for both Julia and Peter. Their journey had been fraught with challenges, but the successful transplant brought a wave of relief and hope that swept over them, renewing their spirits and deepening their bond. In the hospital recovery room, Peter was the first to wake up. The steady beep of the monitors was a comforting reminder that he had made it through. He turned his head slightly and saw Julia in the bed next to him, still resting from her procedure. The sight of her filled him with gratitude so profound it brought tears to his eyes. She had given him the greatest gift, a chance at life. When Julia awoke, the first person she saw was Peter, sitting up in his bed, a smile of pure joy on his face. Good morning, hero, he said softly, his voice filled with warmth. Julia smiled weakly, her heart swelling with relief. Morning, Peter. How are you feeling? Alive, he replied, his voice choked with emotion. Thanks to you. Their recovery was a journey of its own. Physical therapy sessions, follow-up appointments, and long talks about their experiences became part of their daily routine. They supported each other through the pain and the triumphs, their friendship growing stronger with each passing day. Peter often found himself marveling at Julia's bravery. You didn't have to do this, you know, he said one afternoon as they sat in the hospital garden, soaking up the sun. I know, Julia replied, her eyes meeting his with a calm sincerity.
But I wanted to. You mean a lot to me, Peter.
And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't hesitate. Her words touched Peter deeply. He reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. I can never thank you enough. You've given me a second chance. As they transitioned from the hospital back to their daily lives, the bond they had forged through sacrifice became a cornerstone of their relationship. They found solace in each other's company, sharing stories, laughter, and moments of quiet reflection. Their friendship was no longer just a connection between colleagues. It was a deep, unbreakable bond formed through an extraordinary act of love and bravery. Peter's health steadily improved, and with it came a renewed zest for life. He resumed his activities with a newfound appreciation for every moment, cherishing the simple joys that he once took for granted. Julia, too, felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had faced her fears and made a difference in someone's life, and that experience had changed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Their colleagues at work noticed the change. Peter's vibrant energy returned, and Julia's quiet strength shone through in everything she did. They were a source of inspiration to those around them, a living testament to the power of friendship and the incredible impact of selfless acts. One evening, Peter invited Julia over for dinner. As they sat on his patio, the sun setting in brilliant hues of orange and pink, he raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said, his eyes shining with gratitude. Julia smiled and clinked her glass against his.
And to friendship, she added.
The kind that can withstand anything. Their bond, forged through sacrifice, became a foundation for countless shared experiences and adventures. They celebrated each milestone together, supporting one another through life's ups and downs. Their friendship was a beacon of hope, reminding them both of the strength that comes from selflessness and the beauty of human connection. In the end, Julia's decision to donate her kidney not only saved Peter's life but also created an unbreakable bond that would last a lifetime. Their story was one of courage, resilience, and the extraordinary power of friendship forged through sacrifice. As they looked to the future, they did so with hearts full of hope and gratitude, knowing that together, they could face anything.